delighted. I don't know why this is the first time I'm featuring the Beth Steinhorn of VQ Volunteer Strategies on the show. Welcome, Beth.
Very happy.
And we're in person.
I know, it's so exciting.
We're in New Orleans. We're in
Very
NOLA.
exciting.
Yeah,
That's
we happen to be at the Points of Light, so I'm glad that this worked out really, really well.
Yes.
Talking about what some of your Tuesday tips might be around strategic melding strategy and program together, because as we've talked about in this Priceless Advice earlier in the conversation, volunteer services or volunteers themselves can feel like it's an add-on, or executive directors or organizational leaders or the board doesn't understand that, oh, they aren't free. We need to invest in them. It does need to be strategic. Research has proved it. Service Enterprise proves it, that it's really works best and helps organizations succeed when it's woven in at that foundational level. So what would be kind of some of your top few tips around putting those things together, that so often strategy is up here at the top and day-to-day program is down here at the entry level?
So hearkening to the session today, when wonderful colleague Nyla A. Bear set aside time for everyone in the room to do a little dreaming. My dream, my vision board for volunteer engagement in the sector would be that volunteer engagement is no longer viewed as a program, but instead is viewed as a strategy. So and there's a lot of different players that need to play into that and have that happen, including funders, investment, et cetera. But what can leaders of volunteers or leaders of nonprofits do to shift from program to strategy? And I think of three things. First, to recognize that language matters. And when we talk about volunteer engagement, I think we should not talk about it as a program. Volunteers are not part of a program. They are partners in fulfillment of our mission. When we talk about volunteers as a program, or volunteer engagement as a program that's nice to have, that's off on one branch of the org chart as opposed to layered throughout vertically and horizontally, when we talk about them programmatically, we basically position volunteers as participants, and we pit them in competition with other program participants for resources. So when it's time to cut back, we say, oh, well, we can't cut the families who are receiving meals. We can't cut the program that delivers tutoring to children or provides free or reduced cost spay and neuter to the animals. We're going to cut programs to volunteers because they're nice to have, not necessary.
And they're a program.
Yeah. So we make volunteers participants as opposed to partners. And when we begin to really shift our language and sort of eliminate the P word, the program word, and talk about volunteer engagement as a strategy, we begin to shift the mindset. So the first thing is to really recognize that language matters. The second thing is to really embrace our role particularly as leaders of volunteers, as strategic leaders. If we are not leaders of program participants, but instead directors of a strategy, leaders of a key strategy for mission fulfillment, we then really become internal consultants. We embrace our role as coaches. We serve as, from the HR world, we would call them business partners. We serve as a partner to all the other staff across the organization to help them effectively leverage the strategy, just like the finance department may help managers learn the skills to manage a budget, and HR can help provide coaching on how to provide feedback to employees. We should be doing the same thing, providing feedback and coaching and support to our partners in a strategic way. So we need to embrace our role as leaders. That also starts with not ever calling them our volunteers, but
using volunteers.
Someone did that at the lunch today.
That drove me crazy.
Yes, that was. My hair stood on end.
Yeah, kind of everybody. I watched a bunch of people get the heebie-jeebies.
Right.
It's like,
Then so recognizing that language matters, embracing our role as strategic leaders, and then the third thing really is becoming intentional, active, and relentless advocates for strategic volunteer engagement. And that means even if all you are asked to report on is hours and wage replacement dollars, you can build whatever dashboards you want. Build a dashboard that talks about the ripple effects and impacts not just perceived cost savings, but what's the time saving of staff? And what were they freed up to do as a result of having a skilled volunteer take some things off their plate? So now they could do XYZ. How many new neighborhoods have you been able to reach because you've recruited volunteers from within those communities to extend your services? How, a great, really tactical example is the city of Fort Collins, Colorado, an hour and a half north of me. They have a program every spring, a family volunteer program where people come and shovel mulch. A lot of you have heard me tell the story. They shovel gazillions of metric tons of mulch to put on the plantings in the city. And yes, it's about beautification, but I live in a very drought-ridden state. And it's actually not just about beautification, it's about conservation, and it tamps down the moisture. And so they don't only thank those family volunteers for helping them move however many metric tons of mulch, but they also say, this is how many millions of gallons of water you're going to help us save this season, and how much money that is saved on the part of all the taxpayers on behalf of the city's expenses going down. So how can we tell that? And if all they did was say the number of hours and dollars, it wouldn't really tell the
full story. And so that's also part of data storytelling, or knowing your audience.
Yes.
And how to educate. So coming from the education background, you have the museums, and imparting that knowledge and that context. So what I found is not just changing the language of how we talk about ourselves as leaders of volunteers, how we talk about volunteers, not using them. They're not our volunteers or your volunteers or whatever, but these are people that we partner with, that this is the community. The volunteers are the community. They're directly community members, and depending on the organization, might also be clients or participants, program participants of, museums, and, we have memberships at the zoo, and we also, volunteer there. And it becomes also an emotional family connection of creating good memories of, we do this together every year. That's what I did when a kid growing up in Southern California, was I look forward to the beach cleanups that I do with my elementary school every year. And that starts to set my values as a conservationist, as, someone who has empathy for nature and other people. And I love those as Tuesday tips of having that strategy be a core part of any program design, and then adjusting our language so that volunteers are part of the team. Some team members are paid, some are unpaid, some are full-time, some are part-time. Some come in once a year to do something super important that you can report out to the constituents in Fort Collins, and the people who are like, my tax dollars, like, go, oh, even people like that who can be kind of gadflies at board meetings, were like, oh, that's pretty great. So you can change hearts and minds with that right kind of context and data storytelling, and talking about really moving the needle on making progress in your community because of strategic volunteer involvement and engagement. I love that. I love those as Tuesday tips. Thank you so much,
My
Beth.
pleasure.
Yay.
My pleasure.